I just want to know. Seeing that we don't have no line and everyone's signed up, I'm gonna call the Board of Trustees meeting to order.
And as the chair of the plan commission, I'll call the plan commission to order.
And if we could have roll call.
So Board of Trustees, Tourmaline. Here. Feeny.
Here.
Maloney.
Here.
Minell.
Here.
White.
Here.
John.
Here.
Zagani.
Here.
Plan Commission, Cronin.
Here.
Burns is excused. Jordan.
Here.
Bartle. Here. Minell.
Here.
Mumford.
Here.
And White.
Here.
Number 5, written communications received. I have 2, if anybody has any more. We can certainly come up here. I have one from Tim Russell, undecided. Is that changed from undecided?
No.
Okay. And then I have one from Michael Stewin, I'm sorry.
Bad handwriting.
Yep, 5903 Mary Lane, opposition to Schofield Avenue corridor plan, in opposition, and yes, you'd like to make an oral statement?
Yes, but not initially, if that's all right.
Okay, that's fine. Let's see, public hearing. Number 6, public hearing, adopt components of the village's comprehensive plan consisting of the Schofield Avenue corridor plan as part of volume 3 supplemental plans. Presentation by MD Roffers and staff. Mark?
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
I think you may want to let the audience know that this is for the Schofield Avenue plan.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The Weston Avenue plan is scheduled
Yep.
for 7.
Weston Avenue is at 7, I'm sorry. 5 o'clock is for the Schofield Avenue. So just so you're aware of that. And, okay. So right now, we're gonna be talking about Schofield Avenue, and then at 7, we'll open up that hearing for Weston Avenue.
So, I don't know if we get any introductory comments for Mark, our consultant here, just so everyone knows, I think some of you may have had meetings with Mark over the course of this plan preparation, which actually began, I guess, back in 2018. I think a lot of the people in this room were at a hearing or a meeting we had in fall of 2019 as well. And we were ready to bring that to public hearing at that time essentially, but last year was kind of a strange year for everyone, so we were unable to hold the public hearing. So that's where we are tonight. Mark is of course, a consultant that we partner with on several projects with the village, but he's been spearheading this plan on the Schofield Avenue corridor. So I guess I'll turn it over to Mark, and we're gonna present the plan, and then I guess later opening the hearing for comment.
Thank you, Keith and Mark. I'll try to get a little closer to the mic so people can hear me at home too.
Is the microphone still on?
It indicates it's on.
Yes, it's on.
Yep.
There you go.
So I'm here to present this plan in draft form to you. This is a public hearing. It precedes potential adoption by the village of this as a tool to assist with village decision-making later on. What I'd like to do tonight is talk a little bit more in overview as to why we're here tonight. Talk about existing conditions along our planning area. There's a tie and a relationship between our corridor plan and the TIF plan, especially for tax incremental district number 2. I would like to touch on that. And then I'd like to dive in for what the draft recommendations of the plan are and what might happen again after tonight. So many of you don't sort of live and breathe planning like I do. And so I want to just talk a little bit about what in the heck this is and what it's intended to do. It's a proposed part of the village's comprehensive plan or long-range plan. It's a 20-year plan for future growth and development. So that's a key point. The things that you see presented here tonight and in the document, they're not all going to happen next year. It's going to take many years. And some of the ideas will probably never quite happen, or at least not in the form presented. It's a vision. It's a long-range vision for the future. It's intended to be a springboard for future and additional economic development along Schofield Avenue and for lands close to Schofield Avenue. And it's intended to provide a blueprint for folks who may own land or be interested in developing land to identify what the village may want to see or may want to approve when rezoning proposals come forward. So I'm not a developer. I don't work for developers. I work for the village. The idea is this provides a blueprint or a guide for folks who are interested in investing in the community and developing or redeveloping land. And the flip side of that is it's not compulsory. In other words, if you own property in or near this planning area and you don't want to change, you're happy with the way things are right now, God bless you. And you can continue to do what you're doing in the area. Our corridor planning area is pretty broad. It's not just the properties that abut Schofield Avenue, but our study area goes a few blocks north and a few blocks south of Schofield Avenue, extending from Ryan Street on the east to the western village limits near Rothschild and Schofield on the west. We, just for review for everyone, development began when the roadway served as Highway 29 many years ago. Some of those vestiges remain, but a lot of the area has in fact redeveloped and turned over, especially since the early 2000s. Land uses west of Von Kennel, mostly commercial, services and retail, east of Von Kennel, with the notable exception here today and a couple of others, mostly industrial uses. Nate, you're doing a good job keeping up with me, so thanks. Looking at the, turning to the next slide, the existing conditions, modern commercial development, as I mentioned, focused on the western part of the corridor. That's the area that when the tax incremental district was established in 2004 really kicked off and kicked into gear with Target and other things on its heels. At that point in time, the streetscaping, the trees and medians and so forth were installed between Business 51 and Birch Street. And that the other thing we know as we look at Schofield Avenue is there's a lot of small pieces of land, smaller parcels, some of which were probably initially platted as residential lots. And they can create challenges for redevelopment without someone assembling multiple lots and pulling them together into a bigger site. And we've seen that happen in a few different occasions already. The other thing we have, it's not necessarily existing condition along Schofield Avenue, but it certainly affects Schofield Avenue, is that a bricks and mortar commercial service and retail market is very challenging. Selling products, clothes, shoes, et cetera, very difficult to do in this kind of Amazon focused world, internet focused world. And that's only those trends have only become more so as the pandemic has hit and more people have bought online. But the good news is we still have a lot of cars moving up and down Schofield Avenue, and car traffic and population density are what drive commercial activity as well. We also have a very strong residential market in the state, in the region, and nationally. We simply don't have enough homes for people that want homes. And that spans the gamut from higher end housing to on down. I mentioned we have an overlap with TID 2. This is not the project plan for tax incremental district 2. I can answer questions on this, but the tax incremental district, at least for the lands that are west of Birch Avenue, provides a potential opportunity to make the plan happen or happen quicker than it otherwise might happen. It covers about 100 acres and it covers again, the western part of our planning area for the corridor plan. Tax incremental district number 2 was created about 16 years ago. It was intended to facilitate commercial development along Schofield Avenue, which it's done a pretty good job of, at least, especially in its early years. It funded those improvements. It provided incentives for people to redevelop lands. It's costly to do when you have existing buildings on land, existing infrastructure, sometimes the need for site cleanup and other things. TID 2 doesn't have a long life left. It has to close within 10 years, and the amount of the time that the village can use to spend money to create incentives for redevelopment or fix issues with roads or improve intersections is set to expire in 2026. And there are funds available to help make things happen, more things happen within the TID 2 boundaries. So that's the western part of our planning area. Part of our central area is kind of centered on Schofield and County Road X, or Camp Phillips Road, is also in tax incremental district number 1, particularly the intersection area and the south side of Schofield Avenue out east to Von Kennel. So that's another tax incremental district that does run into, and it has similar rules as TIF 1. Okay, shifting gears a little bit, Keith mentioned a little bit earlier, this plan has been a long time brewing. In 2018, we interviewed a number of property owners on Schofield Avenue. Generally, folks that owned either a lot of land or that had expressed some interest in potentially changing the use of their land. The following year, in August of 2019 at Village Hall, we had a public presentation and feedback on the initial draft plan. We had a notice opportunity to landowners at that time. And we were all set to kind of move forward with the revisions to the plan and adoption. And then the pandemic hit, and as Keith mentioned, things sort of slowed down everywhere. We of course have this hearing, which many of you, if not all of you, got notice of. And over the course of the process, a lot of other public meetings held by the Plan Commission, the Community Development Authority of the village, and the Public Works and Utilities Committee. So that's all kind of brought us to this point of the draft plan and the public hearing. What is the plan trying to accomplish? Its intent is to facilitate redevelopment in key parts of the corridor, such as between Normandy and Willow Street Cutoff Road. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in particular. It's intended to enable community building mixed commercial and multiple family residential uses in many of those same areas. As I mentioned to you a little bit earlier, residential is what's hot now. It's what's driving redevelopment in many places, in many cases. It also creates employees for the factories and other places in town, and patrons for the businesses that exist along the corridor. So it is a part of the corridor plan. As we head further east along the corridor out to this area, I think part of the idea is to kind of enliven it, lighten it up, increase the traffic to encourage additional commercial development in this neck of the woods that we're standing and sitting today. In addition to that, promoting small-scale business development and redevelopment within the Weston Commercial Park south of Village Hall, and even on the Village Hall site once that building or that function is relocated in several months. A lot of you probably own property or own a home in this corridor area. A big part of this plan is to provide sensitive land use transitions to folks that already live and exist within this area. Again, no requirement to move or to sell, and the desire with any of these proposals is to have them blend in with what's out there today. Then the final theme is to improve the function and appearance of Schofield Avenue, especially for the parts that were not finished or refinished in the early 2000s east of Birch Street. And I'll talk a little bit more about what some of the ideas are there. I've emphasized this already. I just want to, again, for those of you who are less familiar with planning and what it is intended to do, none of the proposed roadway upgrades I'm going to share have been programmed by the village for construction yet. And they require detailed design work and property owner involvement before they could reach that stage. Land use changes, again, are going to occur over a period of years, if not decades. And they're going to be based on landowner issues and landowners selling to other owners who might be interested in developing land. We don't have any power as a village to tell you thou shalt redevelop your land, you have to move. That's completely up to you. This is the framework for those who are interested in making those decisions. You'll see some conceptual layouts on some of the graphics here tonight. I can guarantee you that the actual layouts, when someone does come forward with redevelopment proposals, it's going to differ at least slightly from what you're seeing on these graphics. They're intended to communicate opportunities as opposed to mandate, exact locations of buildings or parking or things like that. And as I mentioned earlier, some of the ideas you see here are probably going to remain on the drawing board indefinitely, particularly if the owners of those land are content with their current uses of their land. So I had this map up earlier. We've divided the planning area into 3 different districts to try to makes a little bit more sense of it. Western in yellow, extending a little past Birch Street from the west. The central area between Birch and Von Kennel, and then the eastern district between Von Kennel and Ryan. Our concept plan, development plan map for the Western District is on the screen right now. The idea with this Western concept is 4 points, and then I'll explain the map a little bit more. To bring more commercial service and retail development there, particularly where we have major street intersections that can manage that traffic. And then for the areas in between, to enable a mix or a blend of commercial, multiple family residential, could be owner occupied condos, could be renter occupied, and mixes of the two. You might have a building with commercial on the ground floor and residential above. Again, the idea being hot residential market and create more employees, more customers for local businesses within the area. The Western District, like most of them, encourages the consolidation of smaller parcels, these lots that are, quarter acre and very difficult to do anything with, like aside from their current use, unless there's some cooperation among nearby owners or a single developer comes in and buys up those lands, puts them together. And then finally, if we're going to have more activity in this area, to have better ways to get across the street easier if you're in a car, on a bike, or on foot. So those are the concepts. These different colors on the map, again, I look at maps all the time, every day. I know most of you don't. The areas in pink represent, in many cases, existing commercial development, but also areas that are intended for solely commercial service and retail development. Yes?
No, I was saying my wife, sorry.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I saw a couple signals over there. The orange represents these areas that might be appropriate for commercial development or redevelopment, or a mix or a blend of commercial and residential development. And then the yellow areas and lighter browns are residential areas, which are already used for residential use, particularly as you get further from the corridor. And you can see these lettered areas on this map, and you'll see them. These were particular areas of focus where we thought there might be particular opportunities for lot consolidation and redevelopment for some of these ideas to take place. Many of you I know have already offered comments on this and may further tonight is why are you talking about multifamily development and mixed use development? I mentioned this already, I'll just hit it again. More commercial customers make the road more viable in an Amazon world for commercial use. Provide more employees for businesses that are operating in Weston. Housing for older and younger folks. Sadly, and I'm probably making this worse, we're all getting older, and there's a big bubble of population that is going to be seeking different forms of housing in the next 20 years. This could be a place for that. Diversify the land use pattern. Your investment advisor tells you to diversify in land use. It's also good practice when one type of use goes down in value, another type can kind of take its place. And to fill spaces in a challenging retail climate. Right now, almost this entire 3.5 mile stretch of road is zoned for commercial use. In addition to that, the village is trying to promote commercial development at the County Road X interchange with 29. And meanwhile, your neighbors are also trying to promote commercial development. The market is just not that big. And so we have to come up with different uses and different opportunities for land use to kind of keep the tax base, jobs, and quality of life going in. So you have an opportunity to kind of ask questions about this if you have these. This is an idea of where we're putting some concepts on paper. This happens to be between Cutoff Road and Pine Park Street on Schofield Avenue for 4 or 5, I guess 5 in this case, different sites that could serve a lot of these uses that we're talking about. Different squares or rectangles represent conceptual ideas for buildings, and the DKG is ideas for parking, and you have to manage stormwater when you're doing new development and redevelopment. So those are ideas that kind of play out on this map. But it's intended to provide a general idea for different types of uses and arrangements for potential redevelopment of these sites. Now, there might be people with ideas here, but again, these are not developer proposals. These are concepts for people to build from. And in fact, there's a disclaimer on all these maps, the fine print that says, in so many words, what I just said. I will not read all this for you. Moving on to the central district, I'll try to accelerate here between Birch and Von Kennel, generally speaking. The idea and general concepts here is to extend commercial activity further east, and particularly east of Camp Phillips Road, where we have some scattered commercial uses, but not many. To improve the current intersection of Schofield Avenue and Camp Phillips Road, at rush hour, it's a mess. It's hard to get in and out of the gas station, that kind of thing. Time to get better. And then to improve how Schofield Avenue works and how it looks between Birch and headed to the east. And I'll explain more about that in a little bit. So like the Western District, we have some redevelopment concept areas. I'm zeroing in on one at Birch and Schofield Avenue, where we do have property owners with some interest in changing the use of their land or potentially selling their land. And so this provides a potential blueprint or starting point for what it could be used for and how the village might approach future decisions on rezoning and similar requests. The Eastern District, where we are right now, supporting the Weston Commercial Center as an incubator and accelerator for small industries, including possible growth of that kind of smaller scale business development, 2-acre lots, 5-acre lots for small industries on the building site. To enliven and potentially align the Fuller Old Costa intersections with each other, right around this area, just to the immediate east, as a growing commercial and recreation destination for Schofield Avenue and the whole village. And as I mentioned, improve the function and appearance. This is the idea for that. Nate, you're doing a great job, and I just keep springing changes on you. But this is an idea for potential realignment of Fuller and Old Caustic to create a 4-way intersection, safer access than the current angled Fuller intersection that I'm sure you've used before by Aero Sports Club, and create new opportunities for commercial development. Frankly, walking, I can see the site out the window here to the east of Dale's Lanes. So again, an idea, a concept that could be advanced. So I've mentioned the road and what we might do with the road before, and a lot of people have very many opinions as to what the village did 15, 20 years ago with Schofield Avenue west of Birch Street. What the plan is something different than what happened there for the rest of the corridor. Certainly improving the appearance is key, but the recommended improvements focus more on intersections and less about the whole stretch of the road in between. We have a conceptual plan that I'll share with you for what we're classifying as major intersections and minor. And then in between those, east of Birch, the idea is to maintain that 2-way left turn lane that is out there today, while at the same time making it a little bit safer to get across if you're not in a car or a truck. So the next slides show concepts for how these intersections may be improved over time. These are different visual representations. I know a lot of this gets flushed out with how much light we have in the room. But the idea is that there would be medians at these major intersections like Camp Phillips, Von Kennel, Mesker, this realigned Fuller, Old Costa, and maybe Ryan, where there would be turn lanes and in some cases in the future as traffic warranted, stoplights, signals. And then in between those spaces, again, it would look not too different than it does today with the center turn lane. And then there's the next slide indicates so-called minor intersections where we have a little just less improvement. The medians are not as long because you don't have many cars that need to turn there, probably don't have traffic signals. And, but kind of reflecting and echoing those improvements. Now, none of these things have been designed in detail. They're ideas, they're concepts. And if the village believed them worthy, they could be taken on, maybe several at once or one at a time as traffic demand warranted. The tax incremental district, at least for some of them, districts might provide a funding source to help pay for them, which is always critical. Next slide. So how does the plan get carried out? I've talked about this a little bit as we move forward. First thing we would have to do if the village decides to adopt this is make sure it's consistent with all the other plans that the village has and are available online for review. And then after that, I think the concept would be just to sit and wait for private entities, developers, landowners to say, hey, I like that idea for opportunity site L or whatever. And here's my specific idea for how this might develop. And then rezoning activity would occur in conjunction with that. So if you live near those, you get notice of a rezoning and come to a plan commission meeting for a specific development proposal. The TID 2 project plan was created in a different era, and it could use a refresh to talk about and to kind of advance some of the redevelopment opportunities for the Western District that are here in this. And so that could be a next step for implementation as well. For these projects that are identified that would require capital improvements like intersection improvements, the village could start to budget for them with the recognition that if it's a tax incremental district eligible project, it ought to be best be done in the next 5 years for that spending period to help with that. Conversion of the municipal building site for economic development, bringing that on the tax rolls is an implementation step. And ongoing dialogue with business and property owners, I think, is key. You guys own the land, you control the land. The village would love, for you and others along the corridor to participate in implementing the plan. After I'm done, and I promise it'll be seconds and not minutes, we'll have, you give an opportunity for public hearing questions and comments. I've got the mic up here that I'll give up, and Nate also has a mic in the back of the room that you can walk around to you. We may have a meeting set up so the plan commission could provide a recommendation on the plan tonight after the public hearing, and the board could adopt it if it chose. Could also postpone action, and we can talk more about that as we get to that stage of the process. So with that, I'll close my presentation and turn it back to one or both chairs to open up the public hearing.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
At this time, we're gonna open a public hearing to the Board of Trustees. Lauren?
And I'll open the public hearing to adopt components of the village plan, village's comprehensive plan consisting of the Schofield Avenue corridor plan as part of volume 3 supplemental plans. For the plan commission, hearing is open.
Public comment period. I brought up these two people here front first that were noticed about. I'm gonna read one here by a Judy Haney. I'm assuming that she sent this yesterday, I believe. Jennifer must have had this on your email. I'll read this into the record. We are concerned about our residential street turning into a mix of large apartment complexes or businesses with all the smaller single-family homes here. It would have completely changed the Rosenbach neighborhood we are all used to living in. Being with walking distance and within 1 block of Schofield Avenue, this is a great concern for us. That's why we moved here in the first place. Sincerely, Arlen and Judy Annie. That one, and then I had these other two. Let's start with Jim. What are you thinking?
Well, I guess basically the ideas you presented, most of them I really couldn't follow on hearing for the first time. Probably what I was most interested in is.
Jim, could you just pause for the microphone there?
Primarily what I was interested in is how this is going to raise the taxes. Because it seems to me like right now, government thinks they have an infinite source of money. And that's what I'm seeing overall.
Okay.
As far as the plans, I don't know. I really can't comment on those.
Okay, thank you. Oh, no, I have one more. Okay, sorry. Michael,
Yes, that's me.
did you want to?
Sure. Would you like me to speak from here?
Just so everybody can hear you, he'll bring a mic.
Grab a mic.
Yeah, just grab it.
Oh, wow. All right. A little bit more informal than I'm used to, but all right.
Good evening, everyone. So I just wanted to make a couple of comments, initially pointing out as to what was not discussed and then highlighting some of the points that were discussed. So one, as stated, absolutely no idea in terms of what this cost is going to be. The PDF that's available on the village's website is 90 pages. Not sure exactly how many people have read all 90 pages. Within that document itself, there are $2 sites. We have absolutely no idea what this is going to cost us from a financial standpoint. I understand that the money that, the $2 signs that are referenced then, that relates to a proposal that's going to expire. Secondly, there is no discussion whatsoever as it relates to the 90 pages on single-family residential plans, not a single one. So what we're talking about then is multifamily units. We haven't talked about if those are going to be in the form of condos or apartments. So are those going to be actual rentals or are those going to be property ownership? I don't know about the rest of the members here and the village constituents here, but what goes hand in hand with owning property is pride in your ownership of your property. You do not have that with rentals. If anybody's a landlord here, you can speak to that 100-fold. Secondly, what I would also like to point out then is we're talking about increased traffic inherently, right? So part of the idea is that we're going to increase traffic. So not only down Schofield Avenue, but also along the corridors. We're talking about creating a street right outside here. What also comes hand in hand with increased traffic? There's going to be an increase in crime between the transient population that has yet to be identified in terms of whether or not they're going to be renters or property owners, coupled with the increase in traffic. You can ask any law enforcement representative in Marathon County why there is a problem with, and if you don't believe me, you can look at the Wausau Pilot website every Thursday. Are we looking at those different charges? How many of those are actually from Marathon County? Majority of those drug crimes are not from Marathon County. They're coming from the surrounding areas because of the cross intersections that we have within Marathon County. And what are we doing with this proposal? Creating increased traffic, creating increased out of area, at least representatives, from what I understand, that would become representatives in air quotes. Arguably, I believe you're giving an increased rise to potential crime. So again, these are all going to be the hidden points that are not talked about. What else has not been talked about? What are the number of vacant commercial properties currently on Schofield Avenue? We can go right across the street right here. There's one right there. So, but now we're contemplating adding more when you don't have a limited number. And I know Patriot Auto's here. There's going to be a building for sale. If you want to buy that one, you can buy that one. I think at least theoretically, he's moving into a new location. Perhaps it's two. We don't have a shortage as it relates to commercial properties. And I believe that the statement that we need more commercial properties is contradictory to the rise within Amazon itself then as well. So if we're starting to be concerned about property or business going to Amazon and an increase as it relates to internet usage and online usage and purchases, what is going to take away from that? The idea is let's put up more buildings because then people will stop shopping on Amazon because they can shop more locally. There are services that we need to go to. I don't see a lack of services currently available in the Weston area up and down Schofield Avenue at all, not by any extent. And more businesses, if you look at the financial industry, are going to online platforms almost exclusively. When is the last financial institution building that was built in Marathon County? We have one certainly as it relates to Cloverbelt Credit Union down the road. We didn't need all this in order to get that credit union established on Schofield Ave that has a substantial presence in both in terms of land size and property ownership and traffic that goes into it. So as a whole, I think it's unnecessary. I think it's going to have an increase in crime. We're talking about Schofield Avenue. When we look at then the Western District, the Central District, the Eastern District, that's not confined to Schofield Avenue. If you want to address Schofield Avenue and leave the residential areas alone. You want to pretty up Schofield Avenue? I'm all for that. But don't impact the residents. Don't impact the residential neighborhoods. So, and increase traffic. Are we going to lower the speed limits? Are we going to increase the speed limits? I live right off of Old Costa Lane. 75%, if not greater, of those homes have children, grade school age children that run up and down the streets. They don't look both ways before they cross the streets. There's dogs. My dog's one of them that runs on the street. We're going to increase traffic, and now we're also then increasing, well, I should say lowering then our public safety. There's a duty there that goes hand in hand. Who's watching out for these kids that are running up and down the streets? Is Old Casa Lane gonna stay 25 miles per hour? We don't know that. Presumably, the people that live on Old Casa Lane would certainly like that to remain at 25 miles per hour. And again, I've addressed in the lack, that there's not presently a lack of vacant properties. And we also had talked about, if I gathered what had started this, it was a survey of 15 people. Is that right? And then the village decided, let's follow the lead of these 15 people. No offense to you, Mark.
Yeah.
Engage somebody that's from out of the area, that doesn't pay property taxes, that doesn't vote for any one of you, to come in here, put this 90-page proposal together, and then not address any of these valid points that is, I think, inherently going to change the neighborhood makeups. It just absolutely is going to. Once you start changing the roads and changing the speed limits, and you're bringing in a rental population, I think that's just gonna have a lot more negative consequences than the benefits that are gained by increasing these commercial properties that are available. And that is all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
That was a survey of the 15 largest landowners in the area, correct? Not after the individual record?
No, it was, so the process started, and then we talked to property owners. The process was approved by the village board to move forward, because we saw land use change occurring, and we saw changes in the market along Schofield. So impetus was the village board making decisions on Schofield Avenue and surrounding lands. Probably, to your point, didn't make sense to be zoned 100% commercial anymore, given the declining commercial market. So I completely agree with at least one point, probably a couple of yours, that we need fewer areas for commercial use along Schofield Avenue, not more. And we need other things to drive commercial development, which is people and traffic, to make what is left in commercial use more viable.
Could I just add one additional point? I'm sorry, I lost the microphone. As I think about this, all it looks like we're trying to do is create another Rib Mountain or another Grand Avenue. We already have a Rib Mountain. We already have a Grand Avenue. If people wanted those things, they could move to Rib Mountain. And then you have all the traffic problems that go hand in hand with all those businesses up down Rib Mountain. And as you go down then what would be Schofield, no longer Weston, Grand Avenue, that's the same problem. And what, at least up until recently on Schofield Ave, once you exited then Weston and turned into Schofield, that road was a roller coaster. I mean, literally every couple feet, you're riding on a bump. These are the hidden costs that are not addressed whatsoever. Who's gonna be paying for this maintenance of these increased traffic? So the roads are gonna have to be changed. The roads are gonna therefore deteriorate more because there's gonna be more cars on them. And just as it relates to one of the points as it relates to Dale's Weston Lane. So thank them for hosting this. No matter how many roads you put in, everybody's coming down Schofield Avenue off of 29 to get to Dale's Weston Lanes. You're not changing anything. You brought in this road over here, Dale's Weston Lanes, for your state bowling tournaments. They're not coming down this road between Dale's and Arrow in order to get to Dale's. These are people that are coming from out of the area that already have sufficient access to Dale's Weston Lanes. I don't think that we're bringing in substantially more business or more traffic here. It's still likely going to be funneled towards Rib Mountain. And you already, again, have substantial businesses there, and likewise, again, on Grand Avenue. I think now we're just looking to try to mimic those. And if people wanted those, that's where they would currently be living. At least in my considered opinion, I'm speaking for me personally, I moved to Weston to get away from that, and now Weston is saying, here's a 90-page PDF in order to make us look exactly like what I was trying to avoid. Done for real this time.
Thank you. That's what I have for correspondence. I think we do want to open it up. Yep, we want to open it up. What we're going to ask is to a different topic. If you want to just say opposed or you agree, that's fine. But, if a topic was brought up and it's already been hashed about, talked about, let's move on to a different topic. So I had a hand up over here, Jim. Do you want to open the hearing? Yes, why don't we open up the hearing?
It's already open.
I thought we did already. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you're excused. Mistake. Yeah, thank you. So we are open and we are in public comment. And all is good. Jim? Thank you, Nate.
Okay. Jim Pencinel, 5002 Earl Street.
I want to just clarify here with Michael here. Jim Pennisol, he does not own the building he's in. He's leasing or renting that from.
It's for sale. I helped get into
It's been
it.
for sale before you got in here too, but just so you know, I mean, he came in here and actually used an existing building and enhanced his business to the point that now he can build a new one where you can see where he's going.
And I think during that time, then the one that would be right next to you where it used to be the small pit, is now vacant.
Right, and I believe those are both owned by the same. So,
Okay.
No, they're not?
They're not,
So,
separate.
sorry. But I just want to make that point. Go ahead, Jim.
All right, so I just had a couple of questions for Mark here. I guess I was the other guy in the chairs that read all 90 pages of your PDF.
There's
What
only
changed-
51.
No, there's 90.
It's 51.
Either way.
Well, yours looks double-sided.
It does. So I read it, all of them. What changes were made since the last draft? So we were not in this room, but a
Yeah.
block west of here in August of 19. Between then and now, what has changed? I went through it and maybe moved a comma or something, but I didn't see we didn't reinvent the wheel here. What changed?
Do you want to ask all your questions or do you want me to answer them as you ask them? I
We can
don't
do
know
them
how
one
many
at a
you have,
time.
Jim.
I only have 3.
All right. So one of the things, Jim, that was changed was we really softened up this driverless cars thing based on comments that you had in 2019. So you probably noticed some fairly significant changes that we weren't going to have cars without people steering them in 5 years.
Not yet, no.
So there was some of that language in direct response to some of the comments that you and others did offer in 2019. So it was more than just commas and things like that. But I don't have a track changes version
Okay,
to be able
great.
to tell you exactly what changed.
And then, so this was kind of delayed, the public hearing was delayed due to a global pandemic here, and everyone in this room, I'm sure can agree that the world works differently now than it did 2 years ago, right? We've got folks telecommuting and right now, however many people online that aren't physically present at this meeting.
Right.
Did that change or impact this design at all?
I think
I don't think anyone could have foreseen that as a thing that could happen, but it happened and here we are.
I think it reinforced the demand for housing, and I think it reinforced the soft market for commercial service and retail. So I think the plan is fairly well positioned for that. People can stay home more to work, depending on your industry, and I think that'll hold for a while, where there's going to be some businesses that say, hey, yeah, come in 2 days a week, but if you're working productively at home, you stay home. So people are interested in, having a nice home to do that in.
Okay, great. And then just the last thing that I had is I understand this is just a guide or boundaries for the village staff and board to work within as far as moving this plan forward, and you can't force anyone to change or do anything.
Yeah.
But is there any kind of a timeline or recommended timeline for, hey, if we see some of this stuff, we're gonna build ABC 1, 2, 3 that's on your plan and your conceptual, whichever. How does the infrastructure that comes with it, this improvement of the roads or the changing of these intersections or the signage or the pedestrian accommodations, what does that look like to go hand in hand? Or that's just kind of what we figured out when we get there?
There's a good point. I said I agreed with a couple of your points. There is no funding plan, for this corridor plan. So it would require an individual decision by the village board to decide to fund a project or to include a project in a capital improvement program. And at that point in time, a funding source would have to be identified for it. For the western area, we do have a tax incremental district that can provide some of that funding. For the eastern areas, we do not. So it would require finding money. And so as I mentioned, early and often, some of these ideas will remain ideas until and unless there is, resources to pay for them.
So just to be clear, if parcel C or whatever, one of your deals that was up there,
Yeah.
developer Joe Smith came in tomorrow and said, hey, I want to buy these 4 parcels for parcel C and, put up another quick trip or do whatever we do.
Yeah.
There's nothing tied to or triggering event that would say, hey, we're doing parcel C, so now we have to put in this crosswalk or this pedestrian or upgrade this intersection.
It would really depend on the particular development, but if someone came especially in the western part, west of Birch, where there's a tax incremental district, and said, hey, I can take this parcel that's currently valued at 2 million and get it up to 20 million, then, but I need some village help to make that happen, then they could make an ask, they can make a request for funding with that through the tax increase.
I think my question is just, if we improve that, if developer A comes in and says, hey, we want to improve that.
Yeah.
Is there any triggering event, or this just takes oversight by village staff and village board of, hey, we're starting to develop this now, so now after the fact, we can go back and make the roads better, make the intersections better, make pedestrian crossing better?
I think in any zoning review, you have to look at the offsite impacts of that development on the adjacent roads.
Okay.
And in many cases, there's improvements that are required of the development to pay for that. But so hypothetically, yes, the village could require either the developer to pay for it or to utilize a TIF district or other tool to make sure that the infrastructure kept up with the development.
Very good, thank you.
You betcha.
Just a point I'd like to clarify, and if it's in there, if it's something I should have read, just tell me, go home and read it.
Could you just, in the future, and then also use, sir, just a name and an address for the record?
Certainly. Yep, Steve Warren. I live right over here on Connie Lane.
Okay, thank you.
6404 Connie Lane. And so I'm looking at it, you have Old Costa and Fuller down as a major intersection change. So I'm curious what goes beyond that. Old Costa is a quarter-mile long at best, and then it dead ends into a swamp. Why would you do a major intersection overhaul there unless there's something further planned? And I'll sit down and listen.
Yeah, I guess that would be one of the borderline. I mean, Schofield Avenue and Camp Phillips Road, obviously a major intersection, no one would argue that. I think the feeling was if you took Fuller Street traffic off of Fuller and aligned it with Old Costa, you'd have the wherewithal to improve that intersection. Whether it would need a signal, I would say probably not anytime in the near future. It could easily have tipped into the minor intersection category. It's a good point.
Yep. Go ahead.
So as far as that particular intersection, if you come on Fuller Street at a very sharp angle, and from my experience in law enforcement, every time you come to an intersection that's shaped like a V instead of a straight line, you have vision problems from both directions. One of the main drivers of that particular realignment was to get the streets so you're facing each other and you don't have to scooch out of the past the stop line to see. And I think, I don't know if you feel that way, but
Yeah.
that was the main reason to try to.
That was.
I agree, that came to the front because of the safety issue, period. Now, I think with the safety issue and then just some ideas or concepts with what else could happen, but strictly a safety issue, just to make it perpendicular, to Schofield Avenue. That's the whole thought there. And it just happened to give the opportunity to be across from another street, so. Nate, I think there was a hand up back there. Yep, thank you.
Kathy Olson on Camp Phillips, between 29 and Schofield Avenue. There's a lot of traffic, huge amount of traffic compared to when I was a kid. And the ambulance and the fire trucks running up and down there way over the speed limit. And the horns and so forth, fantastic. I used to be on the department, but they're going way over the speed limit. Now, it's a major concern when we have as much traffic as we do. So when is that road gonna be reconstructed?
You're
That's
talking Camp
not
Phillips.
in this plan.
You're talking Camp Phillips from Schofield Avenue to Highway 29?
Correct.
Okay. That's a county road, number one. And you're talking about speeding with safety vehicles?
Yeah,
Well, they're gonna speed on every street. If they're getting somewhere, they're gonna speed. They're gonna go as fast as reasonably possible for the safety or whatever. I mean,
Chief Island never allowed us to go that fast.
yeah, well,
Never.
okay. So I The safety people aren't here tonight, but, you know, as reasonably possible, as far as I guess I'm concerned. I've seen them go down Schofield Avenue in different areas too, and residential, but to clarify that point, that has been talked about ever since the highway went through, that corridor right there. I mean, it's been talked about buying the homes, about doing this, and making that from the highway all the way to 52 as another alternate to north and south to the highway and to the 59, I mean, or 39 corridor. That is not on the radar. I don't believe that's on the radar for the board or the commission or even staff or even county right now. And it's just not there. There's no talking about it. There's no, municipalities aren't coming together, you know, trying to decide something. It's in very bad repair, especially coming off the highway. I mean, it's.
Yeah, I ride my bike on the road because it's a three-wheeler.
Yep.
And, or a trike, and I can't put that on the sidewalks because the sidewalks aren't wide enough, and nor are the merges going onto the roads. So, I've got an issue with that.
Yeah. You know, so that, it's a county road, and, this is no pun intended, but all the bumps and everything is probably holding the speed down, especially getting off the highway. But I don't like doing it either. I wander 4 times a day for work, and it's a pain.
Actually,
You've got residential right there.
worst part is from Schofield Avenue up to 29.
Yeah.
That those holes are just horrible. Seriously, I've gotten a flat tire on it.
Okay.
How many years in a row has this been to force that part onto us?
Keith, if you had something more on that? It has tried.
There hasn't been any discussion about this forcing that, and that's, that'd be a cooperative effort with the county.
Right, okay.
And we had talked about that as a redevelopment area and part of our TIF plan as well, but I think the resources really don't have them. That may be something that comes up in the future, some discussion of creating another redevelopment area there at some point. Again, maybe to put sites together so that all the extra entrances can be removed and the street be widened, but talking about a large project that's gonna have a lot of impact, and right now, we don't have the focus is not on that at this point.
What happened to the marathon wheel tax that was supposed to fix these roads?
Go ahead and state your name and address. Hey, thank you.
Cindy Russell, 5907 Tricia Avenue. You know, there was a wheel tax that was supposed to take care of all these roads that were in such bad shape in Marathon County. Where has that money been spent?
That's not our, yeah,
It's the county.
it's the counties, yeah.
But it was supposed to be divvied out throughout Marathon County. Did Weston get any money for that?
Only county. And, you know, Lincoln County went several years before Marathon County. And I travel to Maryland often for my work, and I don't see no difference in the roads. And they're doing, you know, 75, whatever that wheel tax is. I don't see it at all, so.
I have an observation, Mr. Chairman. If you take a look at all the, sometimes, how can I say this without insulting people? I'm jealous of what Bird Mountain gets. Let's face it, the county is investing big bucks in the retail corridor, and the surrounding communities get second place at the plate. We have talked to the county many times about fixing Phillips Road, even in a cooperative effort to finance a portion of it ourselves, involving federal, state, county, and local money. But we get there's no way the village could afford to fix Camp Phillips Road on its own. I mean, we're talking $25 million. Not gonna happen without help from the county, and I don't think the county's interested in helping us.
I know that I've spoken to some of you a couple times the last 2 or 3 years. And I half joke that all we can really do is vote to keep the lights on, but it's only half a joke. The state has dramatically crushed the power of local municipalities to do a lot of things. So when we talk about ways to try and bring in additional additional businesses, new homes, grow our tax base. A lot of that is out of sheer necessity, because in a couple of years, we're going to have to make a lot of really difficult choices about the level of service that we provide as a village. And that's just expenditures growing and not being able to keep up with, or under the current local municipal laws, not being able to keep up with those. It's like being told at 30, okay, you have to live the next 60 years on what you make in the next 10 years. So by the time you're 40, you have to plan for, until you live to be 90 years old. Eventually, that's just going to catch up to you.
Well, I kind of agree with this other fellow here that, you're asking the residents of Weston to fund all these development projects, us, before they're even developed or planned, this is all just kind of in the works, but we're going to be paying taxes on projected projects that will probably never materialize. And like this fellow said, there's lots of empty lots of empty buildings, And if businesses want to relocate here, we can help them out maybe. Or if they're, why should it be on the backs of the taxpayers to bring in businesses when this small community, I feel, operates very well in providing the needs of its residents?
I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but I think we need a extremely large print Reader's Digest version of what TIF financing can and can't do, and the fact that we have a limited window for TIF. And that would be, for me, that would be the only way. In other words, not everybody in the village would pay for the development. The people that are the property owners that are in the TIFs pay. And they have been paying in TIF 1 and 2 for since 1996. So. Hang on. You can introduce yourself, please.
Okay, I'm Jessica Trotman. I'm the finance director here at the Village of Weston. For a quick thing on here, in the TIF increment. So when TIF 2 was started back in 2004, there was a base level of all the properties there. That base level was stuck in time, so every single taxing district, such as the village, the school district, technical college, and the county, get taxes from those properties from the value from 2004. Since 2004, there has been significant improvement in the value of the properties along that way, and that difference between the base and the current value, those property taxes go to the Village of Weston only. So we get approximately, I'd say, $300,000 for TIF 2 every year. And those funds get to be used towards our debt service, which we have incurred debt to help improve that corridor, to improve the look of the businesses along that corridor and the landscaping. And we also have the ability to use those funds to help the intersection improvements that Mark was talking about. So at this point, it's not taxpayer funded. It is the funds that are coming from the improved values of the parcels in that district. Does that make sense?
Well, to me it does, but I've been around the block a few times, so.
Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you.
I don't know if I should follow up on that question at all. And I guess just to more directly answer the question, maybe go back to what Mark had replied to the gentleman earlier. There's no commitment here to spend money. We do have some ability to use some of the capacity of TIF 2, depending on what type of a development proposal may be made. That's a discretionary decision by the board as to what criteria would be used. We do have an application process that actually is going to be modified somewhat so we can have a little more flexibility. But ultimately, any decisions to fund a developer's request on anything is discretionary upon the village board. The general philosophy is that development pays for development. And it's not put onto of the residents or the taxpayers to take on costs related to development. Now, there's ultimately some impacts. Whether we have development on Schofield Avenue or not, we're gonna have long-term maintenance and replacement obligations regardless. So, the main driver of, damage to vehicles or damage to the highway over time is truck traffic. So, I guess just an offhand comment there, but anyway, again, there's no commitment here that we are putting out money there that's required. It's gonna depend on individual development proposals that come through to the village, and, we have had a few inquiries from some developers interested in some of this redevelopment, that may be coming forward soon, but, again, it's not being driven by the village. We're creating a template, a way for the village to look at how properties could be put together to make that development more, I guess, attractive for future developers.
Yeah, I just want to explain a little bit too. I've been on the board since, last summer? Last spring. One of the things that is being juggled is the use of the TIF money and how is it derived? Jessica said it was like 300,000 that was derived from the increased taxes in that period of time on those properties. That money can be used to do some improvements or purchase properties, consolidate properties or whatever. I don't think that it's, correctly from Moncton, I don't think that it's been used in that.
No, it hasn't. And we're kind of getting off topic. So I'm just going to kind of go back and step us back a little bit. I'm Jennifer Higgins. I'm the Director of Planning and Development. So this is a plan. What you guys are starting to talk about is ways to implement that plan, and TIF funding is one of the things that's in the village's toolbox to do that. In the past, a lot of the things that you've seen out there have been just developer driven, and that's probably how a lot of it is going to go. The comprehensive planning law has been around since 1999, basically 2000. So it just gives developers, it gives you, it gives staff, the village board, basically a blueprint for growing the community in the next 20 years. This is ever changing. It doesn't stay static. We have to look at it basically every 10 years. The state requires us to do that. So we have a comprehensive plan. This is just basically like a master plan. We're looking at master plans. We have a full comprehensive plan that's out there, has 9 elements that get into the housing, get into single family housing. We know that that's an issue right now. There's actually going to be a probably a regional effort looking at housing with, I've been talking with the RPC, the city of Wausau, Red Mountain. They're getting communities together to talk about it because people live and work all over the community. We know that we need single family housing. We also know there's a need for multifamily housing because you have the younger generation that maybe doesn't want to plant their roots that early. So we also have some of the older folk that actually come in and talk to me and ask for condos because they're trying to get out of there. We actually, a number of years ago, there was a development off of Ryan Street. That was a complete condo development. It was kind of ahead of its time. It's now turned into apartments. But you're gonna see the area change a little different, but we kind of got off topic. This is a plan. So this is, basically it'll give developers an idea of what they can come in and talk to the village about. Give us a little bit more direction on just what kind of uses can go along that corridor. We also have the Weston Avenue corridor plan that's going to hearing tonight, and we actually have the Camp Phillips corridor plan. We needed to get these 3 done and then go back through and update our comprehensive plan because that one had been done in 2016, 2017. Lots of stuff has changed since then. So I guess I just wanted to kind of bring us back on topic because we were getting into the implementation portion
Versus the plan.
versus the plan. And I know it's hard for people to think futuristically about things, but I just wanted to bring us back.
Hand up. Nate? Or, who's got the mic? Okay, go ahead. Then
Jim,
you know.
Jim Russell, 5907 Tricia Avenue. As far as the financing, I think that should be discussed at some point in time because there's a TIF, TIF.
It will be, it's,
And there's the TID, and which plan is it going to use?
it's the same thing.
HID would use the current taxpayer role, and TIF would use future taxpayers, but the present ones would be the ones that would be paying for it. Is that not correct?
It's the same.
That's correct.
It's
That's
two
correct.
different terms for the same thing. It's called tax increment district, which is actually the area that's encompassing it. And tax increment financing is how it's paid for. It's
Which would include future.
No, it's
Your tax-
in the tax actual district, nothing outside the district.
You would only use the TID, not the TIF.
That if TIF two, anything in TIF two would be financed through TIF financing.
But just to say what the gentleman earlier was saying, the reason we live in Weston, a small community, is because it is a small community. I spend 6 months in Las Vegas. I don't want to be in Las Vegas. I want to be here. A small community where the traffic is small and, you know, at one point you could leave your doors open. Can't do that, not open, but unlocked. You can't do that anymore. And I think that's why a lot of people live in small communities.
So
They don't want to see growth.
if I could just respond to that, and I'm working hard not to, debate, because that's not the job here. That's certainly not my job. But there are alternatives to this plan and status quo, and that is decline. And if you stand still, you're going to be lapped. So change is inevitable. The goal is to try to manage that change in a way that contributes to your community. It is not going to stay the same along Schofield Avenue if we don't plan for it. There will be more vacancy. There will be more of the things that we don't want to see. The question is, what do you want to see instead of that will grow the community, increase the tax base? I think the focus has been on spending and spending and spending. That I should have started with this. The goal of the plan is to increase and improve the tax base of the village. And Schofield Avenue provides a great opportunity for that because there's a lot of traffic along Schofield Avenue. There's existing infrastructure, sewer and water. There is road capacity for more traffic along Schofield Avenue, particularly on the eastern parts of it. And so really the goal of this is to decide, you all to decide with your village board what kind of community you do want to be. And I just would submit to you that if you think it's going to be the same 20 years from now than it is today, it will not. It's going to be different. And so the key is to manage that growth and direct it in a way that the community wants to see to stay ahead of the game as opposed to being one of the also-rans.
Nate over there. Get his hand up, please. Then I'll move down. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Paul Keating. I live on 4904 Schofield Ave.
Okay.
So this will directly impact me. And the only concern I have is when the intersection at Pond Canal is improved, hopefully lights, and hopefully we see lights at Mesker, because both those intersections sorely need some kind of traffic control. I just want to make sure my property is able to be accessed still from both directions. That's the only concern I have.
It'll be the village's job with any of these improvements to make sure that every property continues to have access to the road. That's a detailed design step that would be addressed when we're at that stage, but thank you.
When I look at your major intersection concept, yeah, Marshall, thank you. The major intersection concept, the pictures show, it looks like going from the existing 2 lanes to 5 lanes. The center lane being a turn lane for Mesker, Fuller, Ryan, and Bonapano. It's page 24. Page 24.
Maybe we could bring the graphic back up, Nate. The major intersection improvements suggests 4 lanes along Schofield Avenue, but the intersections, the cross street I'm seeing only has 2 lanes. Maybe
Okay.
we're,
And that's probably, when I see Fuller, I wasn't sure if it was the 4 lanes or the 2 lanes.
it was intended to be the 2.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry. Nate, thank you. I don't know who was first. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Elaine Goble, 4403 Acre Avenue. Acre Avenue, Schofield Avenue is our backyard, basically, and there's not really enough property behind our house. We don't own it to really put a building or anything.
Right.
And as far as I'm concerned, there's enough traffic on it already. We've got motorcycles going back on one wheel all the way down, never get stopped by a policeman. We've got trucks using their jake brakes all the way down. So it's quite noisy as it is. It's made ideas of putting sound barriers along the houses that are so close to the highway there. When we first moved out there, it was Highway 29, and we were told, oh, it's gonna be moved, the highway's gonna be moved out, it's gonna be quieter. And it was for a few years until they built the 4-lane, 5 lanes on Schofield Avenue. But now it's very noisy, and it's not safe if you've got small children in your backyard, because it's basically the highway is your backyard. And I was just wondering, like I says, not the popsicle fences that are been put up, but like a real sound barrier.
The plan currently doesn't have any recommendation for a sound barrier. That would be enough consideration if the road is improved, certainly. But it doesn't mention it right now. To answer your question directly.
Nate?
Lisa Rosenbach, 5112 Pine Street. Where we're across the street of Pine Street and Rosenbach, and Rosenbach is on here. Our property is in the brown section on the map for future use for multifamily residential. We're currently single-family residential. If it's adopted, well, first of all, I want to record saying we would like to remain single-family residential. But if for some reason we had to do multifamily, you said nobody's gonna have to move out of their home. So let's say a tornado comes through or my house burns down. If I'm rezoned for multifamily, can I rebuild my home as is, or do I need to have a multifamily put in there?
There would be no intent to rezone any property until and unless someone comes forward with a development proposal.
Whether you or a private developer, if you wanna change that, that's the only way it gets changed. So if you sell to a developer,
Yes,
you decide to do that,
yeah,
then it could change.
okay, but
But if you
okay.
don't sell,
Okay,
or a tornado or any other kind of massive disaster, it's your control.
Absolutely. The zoning this is all very confusing. I'm sorry about
Yeah.
that. But the zoning is not proposed to change on any property until and unless someone makes a development proposal on that property.
And that includes the home.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And another case, I'm thinking here, you had quite a bit to say. We are not trying to do a remote. We're not trying to compete with a neighbor like that with a lot of big boxes. Big boxes, I mean, we're lucky to have Target, we're lucky to have the grocery stores we do. Tine and Cellar, that corner on Camp Phillips, it's that kind of development. The car wash, it's Patriot Auto. It's, the development that is coming in and talking to the village right now is smaller, 1 or 2, maybe 3 levels with retail in the bottom, and then maybe a couple levels of an apartment or condos above. That's what we're hearing is what wants to go on Schofield Avenue. The big boxes are gonna stay out at Rim Mountain. We were kind of dabbling before I got on the board with that Camp Phillips project. That just ain't gonna happen. Big box just doesn't happen, not with Amazon like Mark was talking about, so. And then somebody made a point about how Rim Mountain garners all this money. Hey, there are huge tourism there, and they have the highway right there, and they have the big box corridor. So that, they are taken care of because of that, so. We want to remain kind of where we are, but with a little bit of growth, and what we're hearing that wants to come in is, some restaurants, some cafes, some smaller business on the first level, and then maybe some apartments or condos above them. So that's what I'm seeing, I think that's what staff is seeing. So, And it's up to the owners that own that property or to you to sell to a developer. And then that developer has to maybe grab your neighbors to do any of these concepts. These are just concepts. That's all they are. So if a developer wants to come in for maybe the C section, that's not how they have to design it. They can ask all kinds of questions, go here, once they have all the property, they can float all kinds of ideas to us. And then we'll have to make a decision or see if it fits with the area two section. So that's really what's happening here. We're not spending money right now. We're just moving forward for the future to have possibilities there. So.
You're not still, you don't know if you're gonna be putting new streets in or sidewalks in it.
Nope. That's, if nobody comes forward, all of you don't wanna sell, no developers come, nothing changes.
Okay.
Nothing changes. Until the roads are so bad, then we have to fix it, you know, so. Martin?
So in my 46 years of living here, this community's gone from a little over 9,000 people to 17,000. Lauren White, Village of Weston trustee. Sorry about that. So I've been here at 75 as a police officer, and I've been here ever since. Since 9,000 people, we're up to 17,000, right? Somewhere around there. Our anticipated growth is 25,000 in how many years? 20 years? Right. So, all these people, the population, whether they're, I can tell you this much, single-family homes cannot finance the needed taxes. Everybody wants parks. I don't use it, I did with my kids. But single-family residents cannot generate enough tax money to pay for the needs, the infrastructure, law enforcement, fire, EMS, roads. It's just not possible, and the changing demographic of the whole country is coming towards younger people. And I know all of us with gray hair, we have a thing about younger people. Fortunately, I have a son who's younger. At any rate, the trend is towards smaller homes, don't wanna do yard work, don't wanna shovel, don't wanna fix my roof, I just wanna have fun. Sounds like lyrics to a song, doesn't it? But at any rate, every time we hear, oh, no multifamily, there's a project that's going out on Burke Street that's being talked about that is a mixture of multifamily, duplex, and single family. And this is similar to the plan here, but this is a more broad out place. Taxes, when we put in buildings with retail, small scale retail, let's face it, big box is kind of bad. Actually, I'm kind of glad it is. But you're gonna have, the plan is for smaller places, specialty shops, granted, it's not anything spectacular, but those are what drives a small community, small restaurants, coffee shops, please no more pizza parlors. So, that's what we see as a vision for the village is to everybody, including the retailers and commercial developers to pay for the taxes that they're gonna need to provide those services. Let's face it, if you're familiar, our budgets for EMPD and safer fire district are pretty stiff. In all those years, I never used the fire department, never used the police department, other than the one that came to my home, oh yeah, that's right, that was me. So, we all pay for those things, as a community. And we're trying to make sure that more people pay and not fewer people. So, hey, thank you.
Any more hands or any more questions? Nate, you see one back there? I'm sorry, Shane, you'll be next. Oh, right there.
There's actually an for discussion.
Right.
For all of you after we close this.
Right. Yeah, we should leave this for the public right now, and then once the hearing is closed, then the commission and the board can then discuss more. Go ahead, sir.
Mitch King, 6205 Municipal Street. I understand it's been mentioned several times, this is a concept plan. On that concept plan, I have a piece of property that there's a concept road gonna go across part of my property. If this gets voted on tonight by the Planning Commission and approved, how much strength does it have? If I wanted to build a house right now, I got setbacks I'd have to follow. if this concept plan is voted on and approved, now do I have to move my house way back because I gotta meet the setbacks of the concept plan of the road that might not never happen? I guess that's my question. How much strength does this concept have?
Mitch, that road that you're talking about is already on the official map.
Okay.
So that's.
It's already on the plan
It's on the official map for the village already, the road that you're talking about.
so even if I would have came in today or yesterday to put a house and I'd have to adjust the setbacks to the future road that
Yeah,
might
so
not never
there's an
happen.
official map that is part of the transportation section of the comprehensive plan that shows areas for future, basically future streets throughout the village. So that map has been in existence since the comprehensive plan went into place in 2017. So lots of communities have official maps just to kind of guide so that somebody doesn't put a house right on top of something that would be in the best interest for future connectivity for a street.
So like the realignment of Costa here in Fuller, like Arrow Bar would never be able to expand their parking lot this way because there's the realignment of Fuller's
That one
proposed
isn't,
to come through.
that one isn't on the official map. Yours is on the official.
But at some point mine got put on.
Where's the official map? Yeah, where is it? Yeah. There's an official map that's on the village website, that's part of the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan has been in place since 2017. Actually, the first one was done in 2006.
But I can tell you, I was never notified that there was gonna be a road on my land and, I mean, it's news to me until this came up, so.
No, the entire village, I've been here since that, the entire village was actually notified, back in 2006, when the first comprehensive plan went in place. That's when there was a large rezone that was done too. So there was a mailer that was sent to the entire village at that point.
Thanks, man. Anybody else? Anybody else? Speak here in a public.
One additional comment, Martin. So, out of everybody that has.
Just hold on. Hussein, you want to use this under the board or commission discussion? And not now?
I could.
Okay, could you? Thank you. Michael?
Thank you. Michael Stulin, 5903 Mary Lane.
Mary Lane.
Yeah. So out of the board that has spoke, I heard the word need once. This entire time, we had the word need used once as it related to single-family homes. What we're talking about here is what we could do. Everybody agrees this is a possibility, right? But we have yet to talk about what we should do. So these possibilities, sure, absolutely, we could do them. There's not anybody selling us that this is what we should do. Mark, you had one close comment, and I took a little bit of issue. There's a substantial difference between today as the status quo and this plan. It's not just regression. There's multiple options between this present day status quo and that plan. But you painted it as simple as that. This status quo, that plan, or regression. It's not that simple. There's multiple options. And when we start talking about developers and if they come in and buy this land, what can they do with it? That's a lot of the municipality, the village holding these developers' hand in order to be able to enable them.
Or not.
Well, or not, then we wouldn't be here.
No, I know, but or not, because if we have a lot of asks that are huge and we don't even entertain them. We're not gonna do that. We're not gonna put it on the back of this community.
And what makes this the exception? Because again, we haven't talked about what we should do, just about these are the endless
This
possibilities.
is just a concept.
Agreed.
Let's go for that 3 miles. That's it. Just ideas. That's all it is. It may not happen. And to do anything else with this corridor, I mean, to change it and take all the business off and go all the residential, it just wouldn't even make sense.
Oh, yeah, no, that's not the implication whatsoever.
Okay.
No. And the implication isn't that we must maintain the status quo for the next 40 years either. This is very substantial. One of my initial points was this is not narrowly tailored. This is not focused just on Schofield Ave. And that hasn't been refuted. And the map supports that conclusion. So, which is why we have a substantial amount of residents here. But again, I think we're focused on what we could do rather than what we should do.
Anybody else in the, for the public that would like to talk? For time.
Anyone online?
I'm sorry.
There hasn't been yet.
Just checking if there's anyone online.
Oh, okay, anybody online, social media?
No one.
Anybody have a hand up?
No.
Okay, I need to do this I have to do this 3 times, so is there anyone else here presently or on social media that would like to make another comment? Number 3, is there anyone else here or social media that would like to make another comment? Hearing none, I'm closing the public hearing.
For the Board of Trustees.
For the Board of Trustees, I'm sorry. And Lauren will do for the Planning Commission.
Sorry for the repetition, but is there anyone else that wishes to comment to the Plan Commission? Anyone else wish to speak to the Plan Commission? For or against? Plan Commission. Anyone on social media? No. So I'll close the public hearing for the Plan Commission.
Okay. Now, E, discussion by Board of Trustees and Planning Commission. You want to go separate? Well, either way, why don't you go ahead? You're on both. Or no, you're on board, sorry.
With the microphone, who should?
Okay, oh, let's just get a microphone.
I can log those songs. Thank you, Nick. I'm Hushain Zagami, Board of Trustees. I know we don't want to change, but I think we need to change, especially in highway access and Phillips Road. People live on that road, they're suffering because they can't put their car safely to the street. I know Connie doesn't want to do it. The reason for it is if they want to improve that road, they need additional 40 feet right away. 20 feet from each side of it. If they purchase 20 feet, they are at doorstep of these people. So they are kind of forced to purchase everybody on that road. And that's a big number. The 25 million was mentioned here, it's very close to it. I think we should ask the county, yes, it is 25 million, it's still safety issue, is important. And by the way, that road is one of the busiest roads in the state of Wisconsin, based on the traffic count. So I think we need to change. We have to ask the county to make a change in that road, improve it, and make it safer for residents of the people who live on that road. Thank you, Mark.
Yep, just to dovetail on Hushain, what is the right of way on that portion from Schofield to the highway? Is that 60 feet, 66?
I think it's 66.
Because it's 4 12s and then a little bit on each side of the sidewalk.
Sidewalk, right.
So, okay, that's a good point. Okay, so this portion right now is discussion of Board of Trustees and Planning Commission. Anyone else? Barb, Ermeling, Board of Trustees.
Thank you. Barb Ermeling, trustee. When you're talking about apartments and duplexes and everything, I don't know if you realize how much I cringe every time I hear that word, because I have always been kind of a single family type person. And I look at some of the other communities, but I also realize that we have to do something with some of the areas that are underdeveloped. And I can't see, for example, Schofield Avenue. I pick and save, and in that area, yes, we have single family homes and I hope we keep them, don't get me wrong. But I also know that there's a lot of building spaces that are going nowhere. And I don't know, I'm hoping that this plan or the TIF discussion, that we can do something, because I don't know about you, but I don't find it a very attractive area. There's old buildings, old well drilling area. We have to do something. And what that is, if it entails storefronts with an apartment above it, I guess that would be a way to go about still maintaining Schofield Avenue as a business area, but still have some duplexes, or I should say, stores above the, apartments above the stores. You see that in Wausau, you see it in other areas, and it's a good way to have residential where your businesses are. So, like I said, when you're talking about all the apartments and everything else, I'm not a real big fan of it. I've been here for a very long time. As some of you may or may not know, I rebuilt our home here in 1967. I had big cows coming in my backyard. I mean, you know, the neighbors had them and the gates were down. So I do know what it's like to all of a sudden realize that the area where the cows were is now apartment buildings. I mean, it just happens, and I didn't think it would happen in my area, but believe me, it has. But we have to look at this plan, and we have to look at what can we do with Schofield Avenue in that area, and of course, Camp Phillips Road is a disaster. We have to look at something with Weston Avenue. So I guess that's just my thoughts, so.
I just want to make a comment there. I've been on the board 3 times, once as a supervisor for the township and now twice as a supervisor. In about, this one here is about 4 years, the other 2 are about 6. But I turned 62 last Wednesday. It's gonna be a short story, so it ain't gonna be too long. But I've lived in 31 different places in my life. 7 of them homes, all the rest apartments. I have rented from some of the best people that I can ever remember. I've gotten letters from these owners that own these multiplexes or duplexes, whatever I lived in. I didn't know where I was gonna live when I moved to a new town. My parents didn't know where they were gonna, every time we moved to a new town, my dad was a grocer. We always rented first, and then we decided where we wanted to live, and then they would buy a home. When I moved from Appleton up to here, I bet I lived in 6 or 7 different apartments or duplexes. And I was very, very fortunate to have very good, gracious owners that owned these and took good care of them. And I think right now we're on a good track with our multi-housing. And, you know, people, they just don't wanna, you know, they just don't wanna put their roots down, like Barb said. And they're not sure what they're gonna do. Jobs, there's no 40-year jobs anymore. I've never worked more than 9 years at one place, my decision every time. And, you know, that it just ain't the same as it used to be 40 years ago. And so I welcome the multi-housing, I welcome the condos and the apartments. And I think we have, you know, good management, and I think we have some great companies around here that really manage them well too. I think years ago, there was some really tough situations with some of these apartments that people didn't take care of them. And those are the issues that then municipalities, not just Weston, but all of them have to then have issue with. And so, I'm very pleased. We need housing, whichever, you know, there's hardly any homes for sale. But let me tell you, apartments are the same deal. It's tough. I remember moving here in I don't want to get too much more here, but 78. And I'll bet you 4 or 5 different places wouldn't even rent to me because I was only 22 years old. And I was shocked. I thought I was a pretty good young man, paying my bills, had a great job. I was running a grocery store. Wouldn't even consider me because I was under 25 years old. And now those same places, I wouldn't even go and rent there. So anyway, I want to kind of make sure that my point of view has always been, I welcome all kinds of housing, and that's just my point. So the rest of the thing, Nate, go ahead.
Being the second youngest, you beat me by a couple months on the board. I have a very different perspective on apartments and multifamily homes than a lot of people. And that's because that's where I live. One of my friends just called me yesterday and said,
I have to sign a lease for another year because the bank says that I can't afford an $800 mortgage, so I'm paying $1,200 a month in rent. Logic. So I think that a lot of the experiences with bad renters are always going to exist. There's always going to be an issue. But take a look at just one, Mountain Bay apartment homes right behind Time and Cellar. They very rarely have tenants leave because it's affordable and the management there is very good. Fox Run Apartments, same sort of story, very stable, not too many vacancies. Weston Pines. So I don't think that a lot of the apartments and multifamily units that will come in are going to be some of these fly-by-night shops that are just in it for a quick buck. I think that the profession has been changing a lot, especially with lower wages for college graduates and the millennial generation as a whole. Whether we want, or one of the big picture issues that I'm particularly passionate about is affordable housing. And North Central and Northern Wisconsin, it's a desert. My first job after grad school was a 3-hour daily commute for $11 an hour, and it wasn't even full-time. So if we can be smart about this and develop sustainably, Weston can have a lot of renters to homeowners because they're going to fall in love with the village the same way many of you did. This is where I live. This is where I graduated high school from, and they're not going to want to move. So I think that even those that do move into apartments are going to want to own a home here and set down roots.
Anybody else? Planning Commission? Gail?
Yeah, Marshall, and maybe this was covered and I missed it, but could you explain what, under the plan implementation on page 26, it says amend TIF 2 project plan? What would that entail? Is that adding geographically? What does amend mean in specifics?
I can address that. So we cannot expand the boundary of tax incremental district 2 or 1 for that matter, under Wisconsin law. But we can amend the plan to reflect changes in village plans, the comprehensive plan, this corridor plan, to calibrate it to try to get the development quality and type and location that plans like this want to see. We also can update it to list potential projects that could be funded, infrastructure projects that weren't contemplated back in 2004.
So it's an infrastructure change, listing those?
In changes in infrastructure and changes in potential incentives. But amending the TIF project plan does not in and of itself authorize any additional expenditure that would require an additional action of the board. There's a lot of checks and balances involved in all of this. But as a plan commissioner and a board, we vote that you all have, the board, at least the finance committee, the staff is going to be moving forward to you an amendment to the TIF project plans in the next few months. And you'll be able to see what exactly it does or doesn't.
Anyone else? Joel, Steve? Joel?
Joe Jordan, former owner at Wassa Supply. And when you talk about affordable housing, people sometimes think about cheap. And the reality is that the best way to address that is what we're trying to do at Wassa Supply. We have an extreme shortage of workers right now. We're openly looking for 80 people at our Schofield or our Weston plant. And the reality is we've raised our starting wage to $18 an hour. So the idea is, rather than worry about inexpensive housing, we want to provide jobs that are going to supply an income to these people that they can afford to live in a better place. So as the village continues to redevelop, I really am also, as Mark states, in support of these better developments in multifamily coming in, and the idea of adding apartments or whatever to over businesses really make a lot of sense and comprehensive, better use of the land that we have. So I think we're, as Mark suggested, we're heading down the right trail in that there is an opportunity for somebody to earn a wage in this village where they can afford some pretty nice housing.
Anybody else?
Steve?
You good?
Right?
Let's see, hearing nothing else from the trustees or the planning commission, Lauren, you speak to that?
I think
I'm gonna move on to F, wow. Recommendation from staff,
Staff is recommending approval of the plan.
okay? G, discussion and action, actually, Lauren, want to take the front?
Item G, discussion and action on resolution number 2021-PC-003. A resolution recommending adoption of the Schofield Avenue corridor plan as a component of volume 3 supplemental plans of the comprehensive plan to the village of Weston, Marathon County, Wisconsin. This is action by the Planning Commission. I will entertain a motion.
I'll move to accept the plan.
I'll second.
Approve the
Okay.
Resolution, please.
Gary
Gary just
on mine.
seconded it.
Yeah.
Who's that?
Gary
Gary.
Burns is on mine.
Gary Gard just seconded, Joe's motion.
Can we have a motion and a second? On a discussion by the Planning Commission? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We have Mr. Garrett also said aye. Yes. Motion is carried.
Under H, discussion and action, ordinance number 21-012, an ordinance to adopt components of the village's comprehensive plan, consisting of the Schofield Avenue corridor plan as part of volume 3, supplemental plans, and dovetailing on the back of what the recommendation of the planning commission was to the board of trustees.
I move to accept the recommendation, or, I'm sorry, I move to approve ordinance number
21-012.
Thank you.
Motion by Feeney. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Lauren White. On the discussion. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Looking for a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn the board of trustees.
Excuse me, Lauren, you go first.
Looking for a motion.
motion to move. Second.
Moved by on the question, this is PC. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, PC is adjourned. Don't go too far because.
Motion by the board of trustees for an adjournment.
Move to adjourn the board of trustees until 7 p.m.
By Feeney. Second by Ermeling. On the discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Thank you. We have another one that's gonna start at 7. So